I quit practicing medicine so I could raise my kids. I don't see a lot of people talking about that, and so I thought I should make a video about it, kind of sharing my story of where I started and how I came to this conclusion, so that maybe if there are other people who are moms or professionals who are having a tug of war about whether or not they should stay in their profession or raise their kids, I just want to share my story and see if I can help anybody with my story to figure out what's best for them and their families. So, in terms of my background, I'm a physician, I'm an internist. And when I completed residency, I started my first job. I was employed by a hospital, and that job was a very terrible job for me because it really affected my lifestyle. I found that I was working a lot more than I had intended to, and as a result, my personal life, my health was compromised by it. Luckily for me, there was an issue with the hospital, so my employment was terminated because the hospital closed. And so once I had that freedom, I decided I was going to become self-employed because I needed to create structure in my life in a way that allowed me to be healthy as an individual and still be able to help patients. So I went the self-employment route. I started a practice. Initially, I was doing concierge medicine, but then it evolved and I started doing aesthetic medicine as well. And during that time when I was just starting out the practice, I got married, ended up having a kid. So there was a lot going on. And so for me, it was advantageous to have a practice because I felt like I could have flexibility of, when I started my hours, when I close, and I could still be a mom and be a wife and do all of those things. And then a year into my practice, I ended up splitting from my ex, right? And so that kind of created some complexity to the whole situation where now I was a single mom. I was pregnant at the time, so I was going to be a single mom to 2 kids, and I still had a practice, and I had to figure all of that out. And I did. I found a way to grow my practice because the babies were really young. I only had to put them in daycare while I was working, and I was able to grow my practice that way. But things started to get a little bit tricky. Once one of them started to go to school, then I had to kind of cater my hours to school hours so I could drop off and pick up. And then the other one was in daycare, and I could start to see some complexities coming up. But I still didn't think too much of it. But luckily enough, I kind of started to have a contingency plan of thinking about how I could make money outside of my practice, because I could see that as I started to work more around the school schedule, it was affecting my revenue. And so I decided to figure out another way of making money, which I'll talk about at the end of this video. So, but in the back of my head, I was like, maybe things will get better once both of my kids go to school. So I got to the point where my kids were in kindergarten and 2nd grade. And so I thought, okay, I finally hit the mark. I will be able to work during school hours, and then they can go to school and things would be more stable. And unfortunately for me, that did not happen. I had the complete opposite effect. My older kid was having problems with school, and we were trying to figure out what was going on with her. It wasn't just school problems. She was also having a lot of health problems. And so I was missing a lot of days of work. And again, because I was a solo practitioner, it was affecting my revenue. And then I started to have similar problems with my second child. And that just continued to compound to the point where I got to a point where I had to take one of my kids out of school because she was literally mentally, she was not doing well in the school setting. And so it was such a difficult decision because I'm solo mom. I'm a solo mom, and I have to take care of my kids, but then at the same time, I have a business that is what is keeping me alive. That's, creating the livelihood that I have so I can take care of my kids. And so I had this huge tug of war situation where I couldn't figure out what to do, I didn't have the mental bandwidth to grow my business because I was constantly being pulled away from my business because my kids' needs just continued to grow and grow and grow. And the needs of my kids grew to the point where it was affecting the business, right? It's affecting revenue. It was affecting how many days I had to work. Prior to even taking my younger one out of school, I had to do preschool where it was just 3 hours a day. So I only had 3 hours to work, and that reduced my revenue even more. And then I tried to take my kid to work, but that didn't work because of, just who she is and the different things that come about with that. And so I got to this point in my life where I just tried to do both. Okay. I tried to do both and it almost killed me. It almost killed me, but I tried to say, okay, I'm going to keep one kid in school, keep the business, and then stay at home with the other kid. And that was disastrous. And while I was trying to do that, my second kid, her problems started to get worse in school. So eventually I had to take both of them out. And so I eventually had to homeschool. I homeschooled for a couple of months. And then, unfortunately, because of that and the stress of that and everything, I ended up getting super duper sick, so sick that everything in my life basically became destabilized. And so my practice was closed temporarily while I was trying to recover. My kids were home, but I couldn't take care of them. And so thankfully, I have family who was able to help me. Well, as I was recovering from this illness, it made me really sit down and evaluate my life and ask myself, what was I trying to do? And I want to talk about this because I was listening to Leila Hormozi recently talk about, she's a CEO, not CEO, she's the owner of a huge company and she plays a huge role in that. And now she's pregnant and she's having to decide what the priority of her life is and what role she's going to play moving forward. And one of the things that I realized that I was struggling with at the time was the fact that I was trying to do two things at the same time. And I was trying to have two priorities at the same time. I think I read a book, I think in the book Essentialism, I believe it's in that book, there is a part of the book where the author talks about the word priority. And he mentions that before the 19th century, the word priority was a singular word. And so it meant prioritizing one thing. And so it wasn't until later that people made it into, turned it into a plural form and then made it priorities. And so, but she was mentioning that you have to understand the season of life that you're in. And understanding the season of life that you're in is going to allow you to either choose what you want to focus on and go all in on that, or you're going to try to do both and you're going to fail at both. And that's where I was. That was a crossroads that I was at because I was failing as a business owner. I was failing my patients and I really had a hard time with the fact that I wasn't doing my best as a physician, but I did not have the mental bandwidth to take care of my patients. And I was really struggling with the fact that I had spent my entire life towards this goal of becoming a physician and dedicating my life to helping patients and helping them with whatever it was that I was helping them with. And I was struggling with letting go of that identity and letting go of that life because it was like my whole life, right? I'm making this decision at the age of 39. So basically my entire life had been dedicated to being a doctor. That was all I knew. From the minute I remember as a kid, I wanted to be a doctor. And so here I was in this situation where I spent my whole life trying to be this one thing and I couldn't do it because I had become a mom and I had kids who had needs that were more than the average kid. They had a lot more needs. They required a lot more of my time, and I'm a single mom, so I needed to give them a bit more than what would normally be required. And generally speaking, women, when you think about parenting, always have to give more, right? So if you're a parent, you have to give more as a mom, and then your kids and you and everybody, your livelihood is depending on you, on your work, but then you can't give to work. It's a very difficult situation. And so it was such a hard decision for me to make, to say, you know what, based on the season of life that I'm in, being a doctor and being the best doctor that I can be did not match being a mom and being the best mom that I can be. And I think one of the reasons why I ended up having this tug of war was because I got to the point where I realized that as a physician, and a lot of times as a professional, we tend to put the needs of our employers or our patients or our business ahead of our needs. And so I had experienced this before when I was employed, and I had decided I was going to create a business that would give me freedom where I could take care of myself, right, and take care of my family. And consciously or unconsciously, I had actually built myself a pseudo prison that looked just like what being employed had done for me. I had built a business that didn't allow me or didn't give me the ability to have the flexibility that I needed. And honestly, I did not know that when I was starting the business, which I started when I was pregnant with my first, there was no way for me to know that I was going to have kids that had complex needs. And so now that I was at a crossroads where I had to decide, which one do I want to, which goal do I want to succeed at, right? Which thing do I want to put my energy towards, right? The kids that came, they came, and they are completely dependent on me for life and sustenance and all of that. They didn't know that they were going to be coming into a situation where there's a business. And so as a parent, I had to make the decision of which one do I want to do. And one of the things that allowed me to feel a bit more comfortable with letting go of the practice of medicine was the fact that I could probably come back to it if I wanted to. But if I didn't raise my kids and if I wasn't there for them, that wasn't something that I could just come back to and reverse it, because raising kids, a lot of times their adulthood is dictated by their childhood. And so if there's no stability in their lives, then they could grow up and have more complex issues in the future. So I just had to choose my heart, and I had to decide to close my practice, which was very, very difficult and quite complex and quite expensive, and decided that I was going to stay home and be more available for them, so I could take them to their doctor's appointments, take them to their therapy, take them to all the different things that I need to take them to, so that I could keep my eye on them and make sure that they could be the best versions of themselves. And so that was the decision that I made. But then I got to a point where I was just like, okay, well, how am I going to make money? Because again, yes, quitting is one thing. Making that decision is the first step. But then the next step is still, hey, how are you going to feed your kids? How are you going to feed yourself? All of that. And luckily enough, while I was growing my business, I had developed the skill of creating content on social media. And I had opportunities through it. I had ended up speaking for a skincare company as a result. And so I knew that there was going to be an option for me to use this skill that I had learned through growing my brick and mortar medical practice. I could use this skill to grow a different business. And so that's what I'm going to be doing on this moving forward. I have another channel, which is my health channel. And on that channel, I basically educate on a certain health topic. And then I develop a coaching program on the back end of that channel, in hopes that that's what's going to help me make money. And as I'm doing that, I'm also going to be sharing that journey here and sharing what I'm doing with you guys, so other people who might be in a situation that I'm in could learn from it and do similar things. Because I know I'm not the only person who's a professional who has dedicated their lives to a professional life. It could be your lawyer, your accountant, your doctor, dentist, whatever it is. And you find yourself in a situation where you can't work a 9 to 5, right? That was my big problem. Like, the structure of 9 to 5 did not work for my kids. Like, I would constantly get called to school. This one's vomiting, this one's having this, and I would constantly have to cancel patients. And it was not great for the patients in any way. It was not great for my business, but it was what I needed to do for my kids because, again, I'm the sole provider for them. And so I'm sure that there are other people out there who might find themselves in situations where working a 9 to 5 is not sustainable for them. It might be something that brings revenue in, but it doesn't help them with their home situation. Now, everybody's different. You might have the ability to have nannies and other things like that and get help, which is great. But for me personally, because a lot of the issues that my kids are dealing with are ongoing and we don't have conclusions on what's going on with them, I really wanted to be hands-on with helping navigate the healthcare system, because I actually found out that navigating the healthcare system as a physician I'm learning the frustrations of my patients and all the things that they complain about, because now I'm on the other end of it and I can see how tricky it is, how long things take, and I feel like I would be a better advocate than handing it over to a nanny or something like that. Actually, you can't even hand that over to a nanny. And so again, because my kids' health needs are complex, and I feel like with my knowledge as a physician, I would be better suited to advocate for them and to help them get the help that they need. It only makes sense that I be the primary person in their lives, and I don't hand over certain tasks to other people. Everyone's situation is different. If your kids are healthy and you can have a nanny help out with certain things, and that's great. But obviously, nannies cannot do parenting, right? You still have to be the parent. You still have to dedicate a huge chunk of your time towards the well-being of your kids' physical health and emotional health and all that. So I think I just lost myself. Anyway, so what I decided to do is I'm going to talk about my journey on this channel and hope that if there are other people who are in a similar situation, who are professionals and they're in a situation where they can't work a 9 to 5, maybe they can figure out how to do the opposite. Maybe they can figure out how to work between 5 and 9, because that's what I had to do when I was starting the coaching in the other channel that I have. I had between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. to figure out how to create a business. And I read the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and he had this like question that he postulated where he said, if your doctor told you were sick and you can only work 2 hours a day, what kind of business would you run? And that was one of the things that made me realize that my medical practice was not going to work. And he even takes it further and says, if you could only work 2 hours a week, what kind of business would you run? And so I asked that question to myself, and because I was in a situation where it was really difficult because of distractions and different things to be able to work, I figured an online business would be the best thing for me. And so then I decided that I was going to build a business that surrounded me working between 5 and 9. And those are typically the hours where my kids are sleeping, right? So between 5 and 7, I do a lot of ideation. So I will sit down and just journal on what I could talk about and just have a plan of what I could do. And then typically from 7 to 9, I'm in the trenches, breakfast, maybe buses and all of that for school. And then 9 to 5, I keep open because I don't know what it might look like. Okay, I never know what my days are gonna look like, my weeks are gonna look like. I send them to school and I pray. But I knew that I couldn't have a business that relied on me having that structure. So I built my business around 5 to 9, which is what I will be teaching here. I will be teaching how to build an online business, turn your knowledge into an income source or into revenue, working during those chunks of time, either between 5 a.m. and 9 a.m. or working between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. So that's the premise of the channel. I will share knowledge on kind of personal development, because moving from a professional space into a business space is very different. You have to have a different mindset of how you're going to approach business. Talking about the different aspects of a business, right? How are you going to attract people into your business? I'm going to use YouTube, so that's what I'm doing right now. What kind of business am I going to do? I'm planning to do online coaching, where I teach other professional moms how to take their knowledge, turn it into a product or a service, and monetize that way. And then in terms of like the different options of like fulfillment, I probably will only have 2 hours a week that I'm dedicating towards teaching this to my clients, right? And so that's kind of how I've structured my 5 to 9 business. I'm calling it the 5 to 9 entrepreneur, where I do my best to do all of the work I need to do within those time frames, so that the 9 to 5 period is open for me to be the parent, to deal with the chaotic stuff that I don't have control over. But I build my business around the times that I can control, which is the morning, typically for me. For some people, it might be the evening, and maybe you could even do both. And so then you can still have your 8 hours if you want to build your business. Although I would say I would encourage anybody to only spend 4 hours a day on their business, because if you build the business that way, it gives you the ultimate flexibility. So that is the plan moving forward. That is why I quit medicine. For the people who are in medicine who cannot quit because of the type of medicine that they practice. So for example, if you're a surgeon, then you may not be able to quit your surgery job, right, to turn your knowledge into a business. Then my channel is definitely not for you. But I still applaud you, and I still understand the struggle of being a professional mom and juggling all of that. But if you're somebody who your profession and the knowledge that you have can be transferred into a product where you can talk about it like I am talking about it right now, and you can build either a product, like a digital product, or a coaching program on the back end of it. And if you don't know how you can do that, then that's something that I would love to teach you, because that's what I've done for myself on the other channel that I have. And I would love to teach that to you, not just to teach you, but I think that it's really nice when we have a community of like-minded people, professionals who are navigating similar situations, like having kids with complex needs, but still having to work and contribute towards the household, right? Because again, your whole life is not about being a mom, right? You were a person before you became a mom, so you don't want to just wrap yourself around being a mom. You want to have that, because that is the season of life that you're in, but you can still use some of your time to be you, to share your knowledge, to share your purpose with other people, and to still help people while helping yourself. So that is how I'm going to end this video. That's my story of why I decided to quit medicine to raise my kids. And like I said, I probably will keep my licenses open in case maybe I want to go back to practicing medicine, but I want to see what the next decade looks like for me as I raise my kids. And who knows what type of opportunities will come as a result of me making this decision. But I have finally gotten to a place where I have let go of my identity as a doctor who can only help patients in a physical space. And now I have decided that I can be a doctor who helps patients by educating them and by helping them with coaching, and who also helps other people with doing the same thing that I'm doing now, basically from a business side of point of view, where I'm helping them turn their knowledge into some form of income. So that's what we're going to be doing. If you're interested in following along on the journey, then subscribe to the channel. If you're a professional mom who is in a similar situation, then definitely subscribe. I will have more information about the 5 to 9preneur Academy that I'm going to be starting very soon. I might leave like a link below for people who might want to join like a newsletter, so that once I have it available, you can just apply. So yeah, I'll do that, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye.